Hello and welcome to Nick and L's Cyberspace, where I am Nick and I am joined again by a awesome friend of mine, Justin, to
Hi
review
there.
comics. If you guys
Hello.
listened to our last episode, Justin joined me to review the Battle of Jakku, the first mini-series of this maxi series, I guess you could say. A series within a series. That's what it seems.
Mini story arcs.
Mini story arcs, yes. So we're doing part 2 of 3, so at the time of this recording, part 3 is not out yet, so we're going to talk about part 2 and then kind of give our thoughts on it, and then maybe talk about what's to come in part 3. So this next arc we call is Republic Under Siege. It's still got the Battle of Jakku banner, and it's 4 issues again. And it's kind of, I guess you could say, the middle chapter of this little trilogy that we're getting. But before we get into real big spoilers or anything, Justin, you want to give me your general thoughts of this one and kind of compare it a little bit to the last one?
Well, what I thought was really cool about this one is it's showing all of the backstabbing that's going on inside the new empire and everyone climbing for power because there's that big like power vacuum. Similar to what like we've seen for people who are watching like the Penguin show, is all the gangsters are climbing for power right now and they're trying to secure that top spot. And so this is what all the lieutenants, the admirals, the moths, all of them are doing in the empire right now, is trying to see how they can climb to the top, with Adelhard being like the main focus as to like basically the lunatic who's he'll do anything to get to the top. But it's fun to see that side of it, of what's going on their side, and then on the other side of like how Leia and Mon Mothma are trying to rebuild the Republic by bringing in all the inner core planets to the Republic and stuff. So it's been exciting, and it's building up very quickly to whatever the final climax is.
Yeah, so I just reread these right before we started recording, and to me it felt very smooth and quick. Like it was 4 issues, but I really don't feel like it felt like 4 issues. And I mean that in a good way, because I feel like it flowed nicer. I had a little bit of, not complaints, I guess, but just didn't feel the first 4 issues of the series were paced as well for me, but this one felt very more smooth, I guess you could say. And maybe that's just the story coming together. But I agree with you. I thought it was fun seeing all these different moving parts, and there are a lot of characters involved, and we'll talk some more about that in the spoiler section, about some fun characters that showed up and some new developments of the characters we've met. But yeah, I agree with you. I think it's fun to see both sides of it. We're seeing the dismantling of the Empire and the fighting for power and backstabbing that's going on. And then on the flip side, the Republic is, basically on its last leg and trying to hold itself together, and we get to see a lot of tough decisions made. And just the inner workings of the politics that we're kind of slowly seeing. And I think that's something that I enjoy about Star Wars, is the politics of things. And one of my complaints for the sequel trilogy was we really didn't get any kind of update on what the galaxy looked like, what the government looked like. And then this series, I feel like, is painting a better picture of what's to come for the movies and the series that we have.
I agree. What I also really liked about, when you look at like the Empire side of things, all the spy network that's going on, they like how the Empire has spies in the Republic, and then the Republic has spies, or informants in the Empire, and how they're finding out who are the spies and stuff. And all of a sudden you'll see a panel where it just shows, it's just like a black panel, and it's just got the sound effect of them being killed, like because they're being picked off one by one. And so it reads like a spy novel, it's like a Tom Clancy spy novel or something like that. So that part's kind of cool, because as far as I know, I haven't read anything like that in Star Wars yet, where it's read like a spy novel. I mean, we've seen Andor is probably the closest thing we've seen to something like that. So it's cool to see it in a comic. But yeah, and then you get to see how tough it is for them to rebuild the Republic as well, and the decisions that they have to make as far as splitting up their fleet. Do they go attack the Adelhard's like iron blockade, or do they step back and consolidate their forces to help the other planets that are in need? I think at the beginning of the first one, the Wookiee you were talking about earlier, how they're trying to rebuild Kashyyyk, and he's asking the Republic for help to help like fight off the Empire there and rebuild. But Leia's like, I'll send if I have people, but we don't have people, And so it's like, how do they show those inner core planets their support and how much they want to bring them into the Republic, but also be able to defend the fleet as well from the encroaching Empire. How do you balance those two things?
That's true, and that's a nice connection to another Star Wars story that we've already seen with Aftermath Life Debt, and that is a big plot point of that book. And yeah, I enjoy seeing the New Republic now, I guess you could say, make tough decisions and decisions that are going to have impact. As you were saying about the spy element to it, I've not read much of Alex Seguro's work, but I do know he is currently writing a new Dick Tracy comic series. So he must have a little bit of intrigue in the spy element or mystery element. I think that just speaks to how cool Star Wars can be, how we get so many different kinds of stories and genres within the Star Wars universe, because like you said, we've never really had a spy element. Andor's the closest thing, and we'll probably see more of that in Andor Season 2. But for comics, that's kind of a new territory for them.
Right. And then on the other side of it, too, we get Luke is still looking for Jedi artifacts and stuff. So we get the mystical elements of the story as well, where he's deep diving down into the lore, thinking that he's going to find some sort of tool or weapon that'll help the Republic by searching for this artifact, knowing that it's also being looked for by the the Acolytes of the Beyond?
Acolytes of the Beyond.
Yeah, they're also searching for it as well. But then you come to find out that the one that he found is a decoy, or it's a forgery or fake, because we get a surprise appearance by somebody that we weren't expecting who shows up to tell him it's a fake. Are we talking spoilers here? Are we letting?
Yeah, we can go ahead and jump in. Yeah, hopefully people are watching this. They've read the comic and not just listening to us to ramble.
this first issue has been out for 4 weeks now.
So
I
think we're good. We got a grace period over. The grace period's over, so I think we're okay.
All right. Well, this is the spoiler warning for anyone who hasn't read these yet. But we get the return of Dr. Aphra, who obviously is an expert in all Jedi artifacts and relics and lore. Because I think the last time we saw her was didn't she fly a ship into a moon?
I think
so. At the end of that series?
I think so.
And
I'm not caught up to the end of that, so I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, there's an end where it looks like she possibly could die, but we know it's Dr. Aphra. They're not going to
they're not going to kill. She's one of their best characters in the comics.
Right. Yeah. So that she was going to return at some point. And so this is where she returns to let Luke know that the artifact that he has is actually a forgery. And I guess the artifact itself was the compendium of Jedi Kyneric.
Yes.
So, and we're familiar with he was Asajj Ventress's master back when she was a Padawan.
Yes.
Before she fell to the dark side, before she went to Dooku. And so I thought that was a kind of a cool connection, because that connects it back to, I think he's mentioned in Jedi Lost and Dark Disciple as well. So it's kind of a cool little throwback to that.
Which is nice.
But it makes us wonder what is in this compendium that Luke is hoping to find when he finds the actual one, and how will that help their cause? Yeah,
that's a fun wrench they threw in that, because if it was just a regular compendium by some random Jedi, because they could have made up any Jedi from thousands of years ago or hundreds of years ago, but they decided a specific character, so I feel like there's some kind of significance for it. So I'm excited to see if we get that mystery revealed, or if it'll be one of those questions that Star Wars kind of leaves unanswered for a while and come back to it later.
Yeah, I'm hoping that's leading into more for us to go deep dive down into more Jedi artifact lore. That's one of my favorite things about Star Wars, whether it be Jedi or Sith, when you get a character that's deep diving down into finding either holocrons or secrets of the Sith or artifacts that'll gain more power for them. Like, those are my favorite elements of Star Wars.
Same.
I always think about back in the Darth Bane trilogy, when he's going back to ancient Sith temples to gain more power and knowledge. That's one of my favorite parts of Star Wars in general. So I'm hoping, we find out what's in this compendium.
Right. Which reminds me, right now there's a great miniseries. I don't know if you're reading it, but the Echoes of Fear miniseries from Dark Horse. Same thing, not related to this series at all for those that are listening, but it is a High Republic book that kind of deals with ancient artifacts and the history of the Sith and the Jedi, and it's really freaking cool. Just yeah, I'm with you. I enjoy those parts of Star Wars a lot. The undiscovering old mysteries, and we're getting a lot of that in Star Wars recently with now the Skeleton Crew as well. So that's part of Star Wars I think that's where it shines the brightest, because it's a vast universe and you can just kind of play around because there's so much story potential, you know.
Yeah, I love that because, like you were saying, it really opens up the possibilities to tell more stories when you find these artifacts and that have like these long stories or secrets behind them, and why is it so important?
Yeah.
I love it when we find stuff like that. It's almost throwing in like an Indiana Jones element into Star Wars,
Right.
you know. So gotta love that. And then I love the character that chases them when they're on that swamp planet too.
What's her name again?
That ant thing, that ugly is, it's like the ugliest thing I've ever seen.
Oh, are you talking
in
about
Star Wars.
the monster? I thought you were talking
Yeah.
about the I guess the acolyte he was fighting, the woman. I can't remember her name.
No, that giant, like half-shaved
Deformed
rat with wings.
Yeah, crazy
That was,
looking monster.
yeah. I looked it up to see if it appears anywhere else in Star Wars, but I guess this is the first time. It's called a Cliffwat.
Cliffwat. Okay.
Yeah, Klyffwat. Yeah, I was like, where else has this appeared? But I guess this is the first
time. Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
Introducing new creatures too.
Yeah, because I thought it was funny because Afra keeps calling it cute, and I'm like, that thing is hideous.
In Afra's twisted mind, that is probably adorable.
Yeah, yeah, that thing was absolutely hideous.
Yeah, it was fun. I enjoy when Star Wars throws something new at us that we hadn't seen before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask your opinion on the Empire side of things. We kind of touched on it earlier, but what are you liking about, seeing the, I guess you could call it the Shadow Council, similar to they had in The Mandalorian, but Gallius Rex and Sloane and their plans as opposed to Adelhard's plans and that whole, situation over there.
Well, yeah, what did you call it? Shadow Council? I
think that's what they call it in The Mandalorian.
Yeah, in The Mandalorian they called it that, and then
I don't know if that's what this is, but
no, in this comic they called it a consortium of shadows.
Okay.
Consortium, yeah.
There we go.
And so I wrote that down because I thought that, I'm like, what a cool line, a consortium of shadows.
It is.
Yeah, it was cool because they were all almost like at a round table, plotting and planning against Adelhard. And it's just like a mafia, the way they're sitting, like the heads of the family, that they're using it the exact same way, deciding who they need to take out and who's helping their cause. They keep saying Adelhard has gone rogue. He's just after his own cause, and he's kind of like a wild card they need to get rid of. And then I think Gallius Rex is as he's talking to all the Moffs, the generals, all of them there. Do you notice how he doesn't refer to them by their title, only by their name?
I noticed that.
Yeah. So that tells me that he doesn't respect any of them to give them their title or address them by their title.
Right.
It's only by their last name that he speaks to them, like he's stalking down to them.
Right.
So, yeah, but that scene, it felt like I was watching like a meeting of a mafia. So that was a lot of fun too.
It was, and I've enjoyed that. When the series first started, and Adelhard's still, I think, the big bad of the whole series, but I kind of had him as a character who would be like, maybe I was thinking he is very cunning and very intelligent. I was thinking more of a Thrawn type character, but it comes to it that the rest of the Empire doesn't really see him that way. They don't really view him as any kind of significance, and it's kind of his own ego that's making him to feel like that kind of character or show himself as that kind of character. And I've enjoyed how the Empire is kind of like, he's doing his own thing and we don't really care. We're trying to do our thing. And I think he really, really took to heart what Vader had said to him. And I imagine that flashback we see, which was really interesting to see his younger days in the Empire. But I take that as that's like when he got a compliment and he just ran with that compliment and believed it to be true, even if Vader was just toying with him or it was just something to appease him in that moment. So we really get to see how twisted his mind is, how kind of bananas he's thinking,
Yeah. It's like when you meet your hero or something like that, and they give you that little word of encouragement, and like what he did is he met his hero, which was Darth Vader or Palpatine, and he felt he had a personal connection with Vader, where Vader probably looks at him as a pawn, just a piece of the puzzle.
Just like everyone else. Yeah.
Yeah, just like they all do. But Adelhard latched on to what Vader told him, thinking
Mhm.
that he was special, thinking that he is supposed to be above all the rest, just based on
Right.
that small interaction with Vader. And yeah, he ran with it like a sociopath. He fixated on it,
Mhm.
and that's what he felt set him apart. Yeah. And you can see how believing solely in that one thing just led to his demise at the end of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really took it to heart, and I enjoyed that side of it because I thought he was going to be. I kind of like how unhinged he is, to be honest with you. It's
Mhm.
not the direction I thought they were going with this character. I assumed he would be one of those cold, intelligent, calculating villains, which I think he still is. All those things, but it adds a different element when you throw in the, like you said, the sociopath element to it, and the feeding his ego and putting himself on a pedestal. Whereas his allies don't put him on a pedestal. The only person he really was able to intimidate was the one general, and even then, his the followers of the acolyte, beyond the spice runners, they all really didn't seem too concerned with him. They kind of felt he was being used. He was using them already, and I just think that that's a fun element that it's kind of twist on what you would expect from a traditional imperial type villain.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can see in some of the panels the crazed look in his eyes when
Yeah,
he would get enraged at the people not respecting him or not seeing his point of view. He would just become crazy in those panels. So, like you were saying, you can see him being a little unhinged, as opposed to other ones who are great tacticians, like Grand Moff Tarkin and stuff like that. Like
right.
he is actually unhinged, and he will do anything to climb to the top.
Yeah. Kind of reminds me of Krennic a little bit in a way, but I think a little more unhinged than Krennic. I think Krennic still was
Yeah.
selfish, but he was not as maybe delusional in some ways of thinking. I do like that backup story in the first issue. They kind of showed how his rise to power came. And the art by Jethro Morales was beautiful, and the art, I think you were mentioning the look of Adelhard when he's kind of going off the rails there. I think the look of this comic is so nice. The space battles look so intimate and so like close and personal. You feel like you're in the battle because you get to see the POV of the pilots and just the grand scale of it, how massive it feels. So shout out to the artists that worked on this book because they did really good work here.
The artist for the second one, I think, for that small, I think it was called Consolidation, that second part of the
Yes,
first one. The artist was Jethro Morales.
yes.
Yeah.
I think I've read some comics with his art before. I want to say he's worked on Spider-Man at some point. That name sounds very familiar. I know he's worked at Marvel before, but I want to say I've read his Spider-Man work, or well, saw his art in the Spider-Man comics that I read.
Yeah. And then I think the rest of the comics, all the issues have been done by Stefano, is it Raphael? Is that how you
I think
pronounce it?
so. I think that's how I pronounced it.
Okay.
I'm not familiar with their work, but they did a heck of a job on this series.
Yeah, it's great artwork. It's got its realism elements to it. They do great shadow work in it too.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I love, a good artist that knows how to use shadows and lighting well. And Stefano
And
really does.
effectively, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially
And
when we kind of see some of the spy elements to it, I think the artwork really helps enhance that story.
yeah, yeah, it really gives a darkness to what's going on. It really makes you feel like these characters are really operating in the shadows. So they like hats off to the artists for doing that.
Yeah, love a well put together comic where the art and the writing just kind of mesh together.
Hmm.
Because it's hard, I think, putting a comic together, and sometimes when you see really amazing artwork and maybe the story's kind of lacking, or vice versa, the story's really good but the art is kind of, it doesn't really match the tone or the style of the art. And here I
Yeah,
think we got a good blend of that.
yeah, we've seen a couple of those in the recent years in Star Wars comics and like little
Yeah,
mini series where the art will just not match the writing at all.
right.
But how about the appearance of who you were telling me about before we started recording?
Yeah, one of my favorite little, I guess you'd call him a glow shadow, Weasel.
Weasel, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't expect that. That was a nice twist. And for those that don't know, Weasel was a background character in episode 1 when Anakin was, I think he's one of the kids that Anakin's talking to when he's building his pod racer. And then years later, he shows up back up in Solo, played by Warwick Davis. And that was fun seeing him there. And he's one of the Cloud Riders there and goes on to join the rebellion. And now here he is working in the underworld. So fun little thread where you're getting to see that character pop up. And he's spanning a lot of time now. So
Yeah.
I'm curious to see if we'll see him again or if he's going to play a factor, or if that was just a fun little cameo.
Yeah, it was cool to see him. I love seeing actors and like Warwick Davis returning, and seeing his character get to pop up over and over. I mean, how many times have we seen his face in Star Wars now besides playing Wicket.
Right.
We've seen him in episode 1. We've seen him in Solo. We're seeing him in the comics for this.
Right.
I'm trying to remember if we've seen him in any other trilogy, like the sequel trilogy. I don't know if Weasel popped up there or not.
I don't think so, but I know he's voiced characters and creatures over the years for Star Wars and done all kinds of stuff. So shout out to Warwick Davis. He's one of my favorites. I love him.
Yeah. And we also get the return of the Valance as well, the bounty hunter.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah, we get to see him.
And his partner, Aliyah, I can't remember how to say her name.
I don't remember. Yeah,
something like that.
One
but she was the Imperial character he kind of fell in love with during the Bounty Hunters run, and that's one of my favorite comics of the last few years. Seeing that kind of thing pick up. Yeah, I don't know if you've read that or if you caught up with it, but they I think it went for about 40 issues or so. So in this day and age, it's pretty long for comics. So, but it was really fun and kind of fun seeing him pick back up.
It was weird because there were times when I really enjoyed his character, but then I would have long periods of time reading that series where I'm like, this is my least favorite of all the four. I think there was 4 different series going on at the same time.
Yeah.
Between Vader, Aphra, Bounty Hunters, and Star Wars. I think that one I felt the least was happening to push the plot forward. So I was a little bored, but then it would have at times when it would pick up too. I like seeing the background between his history with Solo and some of the earlier issues that had a bunch of little flashbacks to it, and that was really interesting to me.
Yeah,
but I really had to push through that one.
I gotcha. I think it's fun, including the way Alex Segura too, and I think Star Wars Comics does a really good job of this in general. But this series has done really good of connecting, like we talked about, Aftermath Trilogy and Weasel now, and we're getting some comic characters like Aphra and Valance, and just fun pulling all these threads together, and we get the Spice Runners of Kajimi, and just all kinds of different cool elements being put into Star Wars. And I think that's fun when Star Wars is able to reference itself and call back and bring things back that we wasn't expecting.
Yeah, I think that's a tough thing for them to do, though, because I do enjoy when they bring in characters like that we already know of, but you're not expecting. It's a tough balance when they do that to make it an actual important part of the story, or are they doing it for fan service?
Right.
And I am a fan of fan service as long as it's done with a balance of good storytelling. Yeah. So I felt there was a lot of returning characters to this, which sometimes I'm apprehensive about because I'm like, give me something new. Like give me something that's going to help me latch on to the nostalgia.
Right.
But push the story forward with something new. So I'm worried about all these characters showing up and coming back because they just ended they just ended the Aphra series or volume 2 of it and the Bounty Hunter series. So I'm like, okay, let's put those aside for now. Let's jump into something slightly new. I know we have Luke and Leia again in Lando, but they're like the main, like in the top 4 of the characters of Star Wars. So I'm worried about these characters returning just because I'm wondering if they're putting in there just because they're familiar for the readers, or if it's actually important to the story. I'm hoping it's the latter, that it is actually important to push the story forward. So remains to be seen, though, because we'll see what happens in the last story arc and how it leads to whatever comic comes after this. Right.
It's kind of hard to, at the time, like I said earlier, the time of recording, next series hasn't come, so it is kind of hard to say, like, if this, lays an egg at the end of this series, then it may not look as nice. This middle chapter, I think my expectations are, I feel like it's been pretty cohesive, pretty tight narrative. Like I said, there are some things, a lot going on, but I feel like it all works for me. When you're dealing with a large issue of like all these moving parts, I think that a lot of times Star Wars is best when it kind of focuses on a tight, smaller story, like those intimate stories. I like your, Leia miniseries or Han Solo miniseries of years past, but telling these grand galactic, they haven't really done that a whole lot in the Star Wars comics, I feel like, the last few years. And I'm kind of glad they kind of dedicated this time to like, hey, let's put a pause on these other series. Let's focus on this until this big grand story. And I think it works because we have questions like you mentioned, Aphra's crash and the end of Bounty Hunters when Valance and his partner kind of go off in the sunset, and kind of seeing this pick up. And I feel like that gives it more story potential in the future. So hopefully we'll get the gaps filled of where they were before they popped up in the story. But I'm really hoping they make an impact of some kind. And it sounds like where this is leading, we're getting kind of 2 different the group's going to get splintered in two different ways, and I think it'll explain why we don't see our main heroes in the Battle of Jakku in the novels. This is nice to fill that in.
Right. It is leading up to the Battle of Jakku because they kept talking about the Emperor's final wishes that lead into Jakku. So I'm sure we're going to see a lot happening there. I did find it humorous, though, when we see that first panel that reintroduces Valance. He's in the middle of a brawl. And it shows him like taking a punch. And I'm like, what is happening? Like all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he's just like in the middle of it, trying to answer a call. Right. While he was like fighting someone. Like,
it felt very 90s action movie to me. Like like a little bit of comedy with your action. So
yeah, if you're gonna make an entrance back into a comic, I guess that's the way to do it.
That's a good one.
Yeah,
that was a good one.
I found that super funny. I also really enjoy seeing what are these assassins? Or is it Landrus?
Yes, that's how I pronounced it. Landrus.
Yeah, Landrus, and then the Trandoshan. I like seeing how they're going after a bunch of the different senators that were supposed to be part of the New Republic, and they're taking them out one by one. And I'm like, as soon as we saw that, I'm like, ooh, cool, we're going back into the whole spy element. So that was very fun to see. Yeah.
I enjoyed I want to say it was issue 3, where Luke had his battle with the Trandoshan bounty hunter, and that was a really cool fight sequence. Really just unexpected to me as well. So a beautiful artwork again. I want to shout the artwork out on that because that was just an intense battle there. So hope we get more of that stuff in the next series too.
Yeah, and then that Trandoshan just jumps straight out of window like he's Obi-Wan.
Right.
I'm like, I wonder, like, was that a jump to his death? Like he'd rather not be caught, or did he survive at the end of it? Was that his way of getting away?
I had a feeling because he shows up later, so I have a feeling he probably had like a getaway driver or something nearby.
Oh yeah, he does show up later.
He shows up at the last issue.
Yeah, he fights Bragg.
Yeah, so I'm assuming he had a backup plan in case it went south, and he probably had somebody waiting or had a way to get out of there really quick.
Did you think that a Trandoshan could beat up Bragg? Because Bragg's like 8 feet tall.
Yeah, I was interested by that. I kind of got the feeling that maybe they were just caught off guard that he showed up, and maybe they weren't expecting it. The element of surprise, I guess, was with them there. Maybe. So that's the only thing. That's how I rationalized it. But it was, it lasted. It was a quick fight, so I was kind of disappointed in that. I thought it would be more grand, I guess you could say. But I took it as they were caught off guard and they weren't expecting him to be there.
Yeah, I was very surprised by that because I'm like, Bragg's huge. He's covered in armor.
He's massive.
And he is huge. I'm like, I don't think a Trandoshan can take him out.
Right.
Despite them being the fierce warriors that they are.
Right.
But yeah, it was a very quick fight. I wanted to see, like, as soon as he took him down, I was like, well, I feel like that should have been a bigger thing, a bigger fight between them, but it was over quick, and then he got thrown into an escape pod.
Yeah.
With Adelhard and a bunch of stormtroopers.
Bragg, right? Was Bragg with them on with the escape pod?
Yeah, he was in the very back of it.
Okay, that's what I thought. So maybe we'll get to see more of him, and hopefully he's not just kind of a throwaway Boba Fett style, looking character. But yeah, he's pretty massive, and he's. I was expecting he would be somebody that Luke would be the only one to take him out, but we'll see.
Yeah, and then I think after the escape pod crashes, you see someone rising from the ashes of it, and it looks like it's Bragg because it looks like an armored character.
Right.
So that's what I thought, because it didn't look like any of the stormtroopers, and unless he threw on Bragg's armor, he wasn't wearing armor at the end of it.
That would be a fun twist. I didn't think about that, but
yeah. Now that I think about it, because there's a line at the very end of the last comic where it says becoming something new or something like that.
He does say that. Yeah.
So I'm wondering if that's Bragg or if it's Adelhard in Bragg's armor.
Could be.
Who knows?
That'd be a really fun twist.
Yeah. But I do like that line that he's internally monologuing right before the escape pod crashes. He's realizing that everything he believed
was a lie.
From Vader, from Palpatine. Yeah, it was all a lie.
Yeah. Now he's probably even more unhinged and more dangerous because he's pissed off,
Yeah, I'm wondering though, is he believing that he was lied to? Or is he realizing that what he believed is a lie? So was he lying to himself?
That's how I took it. He was like,
He was lying to himself.
Right. That's kind of how I believe. That's how I took it anyway.
Yeah.
That
And
he
what
was
happened
like,
when? What's
oh,
that?
sorry. I was just saying it kind of came across to me as that he's realizing that like, wow, I'm an idiot. I can't believe I believed that actually, kind of,
Yeah.
that's kind of the vibe I got from it.
And now that he has nothing left to believe in, he's going to be even more unhinged, like you were saying, and who knows
Yeah.
what he's going to do now.
Right.
So,
Which I'm excited to see. I love the scene with Luke and Mon Mothma and Akbar and Leia kind of deciding like, the Battle of Jakku's coming, so we have to really pay attention to that because that's like the Empire's last stand. But
mhm.
Luke's like, we can't leave this unhinged, deranged man who's very dangerous just out and about. Like there needs to be some kind of justice brought. And I'm excited to see Luke and another character that I've really enjoyed. A new character is the pilot Ryan. Really like that character a lot. So seeing Luke and her and Lando kind of take a small team to kind of deal with that is going to be kind of fun to see. And hopefully we'll get some kind of insight more on the Battle of Jakku because I don't think we've really seen it in visual form. I think we've just gotten it in books, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
So that'd be kind of nice to see a visual of it.
Yeah. I didn't know this before, but were you familiar with Akbar's first name?
I was, yes. I'm a big
No.
Akbar fan. So
Okay.
yeah, I love Akbar. So.
For years and years, I've only referred to him as Admiral Akbar. I didn't know his first name.
Gale.
Is it Gil or Gil?
I say Gale.
Gale?
Like
Okay.
pale, but Gale, or
Yeah.
tail. Yeah. That's how I say it. I don't know if that's correct, but.
It's very similar. It's funny how they choose names in Star Wars. How George would pick something obvious, and so Akbar being a fish type species, it's almost like his first name is Gil.
Oh, that makes. Oh, maybe it is. Okay, I didn't think about that.
Well, I mean, just in like how I'm sounding out in my head, I know there is an A in the middle of it, but how I'm sounding out is like always trying to get close to Gil.
Yeah.
So
I read it as the AIL made it sound like tail, so I thought Gale. That's kind of how I thought of it. But
it could be.
Yeah, no, I like that. But yeah, he's an interesting character. I adore a lot. I love weird creatures in Star Wars, and he's a weird looking creature, but I adore him.
Yeah, I'm still upset with how he went out in Episode 8.
Me too. I was hoping for a bigger role for him in the sequels. But we're getting him here, and he was big in the Charles Soule run of Star Wars too. So it was nice to see him have a very big role, and maybe we'll get to see more of him in future comics.
Hoping so.
Hope so.
So have you read the books that these lead into?
I have listened to the audiobooks of the Aftermath trilogy, and I'm really liking the connections they're making. Gallius Rax is a villain in that series, and I think this is the first time we actually see what he looks like. We didn't have any kind of visual of him, so that's cool. Sloane's a big part of that series, and they've referenced things like battles taking place or missions taking place. I'm like, oh, that happened in Aftermath. We're getting to see that in Aftermath, so that's a cool connection there.
I'm wondering how much this series will not only align with that to kind of emphasize those events, but then also, like you were saying before we started recording, Rogue Squadron, those books.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Like, how is this going along those lines as well? Is it taking place during the same years? Because that could be a whole nother element that this could connect to. I don't know if they have plans to do more Rogue Squadron or X-Wing comics, but we have the old Dark Horse series that was really good.
Yeah.
So
that's a hope of mine. I would love to see we got the Poe Dameron comic, which was really fun, and it was all about pilots. That's kind of the canon version of those X-Wing stories. But I would love to see New Republic style. I guess that's what Rangers of the New Republic was supposed to be, that show that was announced. But I would love to see it in comic form, just pilot stories and patrolling and kind of adventure of the week style storytelling. I think that would be cool for Star Wars.
Yeah, I agree. I think because this takes place how far after Return of the Jedi? Like, this is just
I think it's
right?
The Battle of Jakku is a year after. It's supposed to be a year after Endor, but this comic makes it feel like it's pretty quickly after the Battle of Endor. Because the first series, it was or the first 4 issues were like moments after, the battle. So I'm not sure if there's been a time gap in between these stories or how much is going on really, or if we're going to see a time gap, maybe we're going to go see one in this next series.
Yeah, we have a lot of time to cover because I think Poe Dameron series takes place just before Force Awakens, and so there's like a 25-year gap there. So we have a lot of ground to cover with like X-Wing and Rogue Squadron stories and whatever other
New Republic characters. Yeah,
a
lot of story potential. It's a very unexplored time of the timeline, so I'm curious to see what else they do with it.
Do you have any predictions that we're going to see in the next 4 issues?
Well, I definitely think Adelhard is not making out of this series. Like, he's dying somehow. Either he's going to get killed or he's going to do something that will just, he'll be overconfident and he'll pass away or something. I don't expect him to live after this series. I kind of don't know. Other than that, I really don't have any major predictions, because that's to me is just the one I think that's pretty easy and pretty obvious. But I can't think of any other thing off my head, honestly, because I think so. That's, to me, that's a good mark of a storytelling. If I don't feel like I can predict what's going to happen next, I think that's a win for me.
Agreed. So I haven't read the Aftermath trilogy yet, but you have.
Mm-hmm.
Does he show up in the Aftermath trilogy?
No, I've never heard of this character until this comic series, so
Okay.
I'm not sure if. Yeah, we'll see. I guess we'll see.
Okay.
But I know Gallius Rax is in the Aftermath trilogy, and those, I think, and Sloan is, but I don't know if any of those other Imperial characters at that round table that we had. I don't remember if any of them are in the Aftermath trilogy, but I know Rax and Sloan were in the Aftermath trilogy for sure.
The other one was Grand Moff Rand,
Yes.
General Alluring.
Okay.
I
have to look back and see, but I don't remember those names off my head. But yeah, it's a fun connection. I'm excited to see the ending, which starts. I think the next issue is going to release Christmas Day, and then I think it ends at the end of January. So we got about a month left, and then we'll see. I know we have some other Star Wars series announced, but I'm curious to see what they do with all these characters after, or if they have plans for these characters after this story.
I think in the back of the comic, there is a little advertisement for another series starting, and I know Valance is on the cover.
Oh, really?
Along with some other characters, yeah. If you flip to like the back cover on the inside,
I think I know what you're talking about.
There's that page that says next issue, and it'll show you cover A of the next issue.
Yeah.
And then on the inside of the cover flap, it'll show you a new series that's coming.
Yeah, I saw there was I think I know what you're referring to. To have Dr. Aphra on it as well, and
it may have had her too.
Sana Staros, I think, was also. I think that's going to be a special they're doing because they're celebrating the 10-year anniversary of when Marvel relaunched the Star Wars title. So I think that's going to be a collection of like short stories with all those characters.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's going to take place after. Maybe it'll show how they ended up in this series. It'll kind of fill in that gap for us if they're just going to be like random stories of those characters. But I know Jason Aaron will be back, Charles Soule will be back, so it'll be fun to see them pick up those characters because some of them haven't wrote those characters in many years now. So it'll be fun.
And then we're getting I think the Legacy of Vader, which is going to focus on Kylo Ren,
which that's probably my most excited comic for next year.
Yeah, that was going to be super cool. Yeah, so we'll see. I really hope they, in this next 4 issues, they dive deeper for Luke into getting this Jedi relic and how it's important, because I would love to see how it's going to help their cause.
Yeah, hopefully get some answers on that.
Yeah, give me more of that, and I'm excited
for sure. I would love a Luke series of some kind of him just exploring the galaxy and ancient temples and ruins of Jedis and Sith. That would be so much fun.
Yeah.
Well, that pretty much concludes our review, my friend, but thanks for joining me again. I love having you on. Love talking comics. Love talking Star Wars comics, especially. Let the people know where to find you on social media again, in case they forgot last episode.
Oh, sure. It's just the Nerdy Bookshelf on Instagram.
Awesome. And again, I'm Nick, and you can find me on Nick from Naboo on Instagram, and we look forward to talking about the next series next month, and got a lot of videos in the works for us here. We're going to do a Rise of Skywalker 5-year anniversary episode. Going to kind of look back and talk about that movie, and going to talk about some other stuff, more comics. I'm going to try to do more comic-centric episodes because these are a lot of fun to do. So we might be seeing Justin in the future. Join us again.
Anytime you need it.
I appreciate it. But guys, don't forget to make sure and like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Spotify. Leave comments if you want the videos. Interact with us a little bit. I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts if you're reading this series. Just love to hear some other thoughts. Thank you again, Justin, for joining me, and may the Force be with you guys.